When people use the dowsing tool and it starts to operate on its own and they realise that they're getting answers to questions from a source they've never gone into before, they realise the possibilities of dowsing.
You can be led up the garden path with dowsing very easily, and as you do more of it, you can sense whether you're fooling yourself.
You just have to accept what comes, and it can be no, the answer is not what you want, and you have to accept it.
When you dowse, you can dowse for anything. If the intention is there, you get help to find the answers.
It is possible to extend consciousness to whatever you want to do. And in fact, the old Greeks had a thing where when they were looking at an object, they felt that they were actually sending something out to run over the object instead of just receiving the information.
We all have the ability to be able to paint, divine, do whatever, be the best mathematician in the world. It's all there. We're able to do it, but we need the trigger to start it.
I'm Daphne Adams. I've been dowsing since 1985. That's officially dowsing, because I've always had the sense that things go on all the time around you. And my younger daughter had an experience which was very unpleasant overnight, and that caused me to contact somebody I knew who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew a dowser, who came over with a pair of rods. I knew nothing about formal dowsing at all, and dowsed around the house and around the grounds of the house to see if she could find the source of these happenings. And what really happened was that when she'd finished her dowsing, she said to me, "Do you want to have a go?" To which the answer was always yes from me. And I walked down the pathway and down the very substantial angle that was our garden, and the rods went wild. So I was hooked. And ever since then, I've been involved in dowsing. I do all sorts of dowsing, from finding water, finding lost articles for people, no matter if it's a bunch of keys or a wedding certificate or an animal or a lost person, or a person who's disappeared on purpose, which of course alters things considerably. I don't know how map dowsing started for me. Somebody contacted me a year or 18 months ago. She was in Wales, and she had a dog to whom she was very much attached. And there was a big hill, a slag heap, and the dog was out with somebody else for a walk and disappeared. And she rang me, and I got a picture in my mind, and I just drew a diagonal line on a piece of paper as she was talking to me and put a dot. And I worked out the proportion afterwards, the layout of the ground, if you like. And she called in cave rescue. And so I sent the message back, "I think she's here." And they got straight to her, which was very good for me. But that, of course, doesn't always happen.
Pendulums come in very many forms, and it's quite important to get something that you have a rapport with. You have to have the right feeling for it, and gradually, as you use it, you'll get used to that particular material, and you won't want to use any other. The thing to do is to practice. Practice is very simple things. Is the electric light bulb turned on? Yes, and these sort of very, very simple questions until you get used to the movement of the rod or the pendulum. And then you start doing the slightly unknown ones, like tossing a coin and dowsing whether it's a head or a tail. Now when you do that, you'll find that you don't get better than the 50-50 of chance to start with, but practice and repeat the practice, and you'll find it goes from 50% to 60 to 65 to 70%, and then you realise that you can start trusting your yes and no. Once you've learned that, and once you've learned the concentration that gives you the capacity to access this information from somewhere other than your logical brain, then you're a dowser.
My name is Sue Brown, and we're here at Hampstead Marshall. This is the studio at North Lodge, and it was really moving here that got me into dowsing, because we acquired an extra bit of land at the top of the hill just by the church, which used to be a deserted medieval village. And this site, it's got two very interesting mounds, and I wanted to know more about them. And because the land is scheduled, it's listed, I couldn't dig, and so I discovered in reading the newspaper about a man called Edward Fawcett, who was chairman of the Garden History Society and helped the National Trust find old garden designs through dowsing. I eventually was able to contact him, and he came and he dowsed both mounds and the area of the DMV, Deserted Medieval Village. He discovered on the DMV tree pits across the hillside, which he said were about 10 paces apart. 3 years later, we had a geophysical survey done of the deserted medieval village area just by the church, and they also came across these tree pits, which were 7 metres apart, metric. And this was the first validation of dowsing that I'd ever had, which was very, very exciting.
I use L rods, which go out and cross, and that's what I demonstrate. Most people can use the L rods with very little problem at all. In my understanding, what actually happens is that you specify precisely in your mind and in what you're looking for. Then you access the information field, which then tells you where it is. And then you go out, and the dowsing rods just act as an indicator to let you know where it is. And that's, to me, is the technique of dowsing. Intuition is, in fact, accessing information in the information field. There are about 2 or 3 information fields, one of which is just above the physical, and that is what scientists and engineers access if they want information and they get intuitive information. Then there's another one which is mental, and then the third one which is spiritual. Scientists tend to believe that, in fact, that consciousness is within the fortress of the skull, as they call it, and that is it. And it's only chemical, the things that are going on. Newton believed in this sort of thing. He was, and Flood and Hooke believed in this sort of thing and understood it. But they said, what we will do is to look at only something which we can physically touch. They didn't want to be burnt at the stake as heretics by the church. And that, he said, anything above the physical will be in the province of the church, and therefore we shan't do it. And as a result of that, that's why there's been this focus on the physical, material things of science ever since.